Hello. Your money is in their hands. When it comes to security and finance, there aren't many issues more sensitive than this. But recent hacker breaches of large financial institutions have raised questions in many people's minds. Should you be worried? Let's find out. We've been hearing a lot about breaches in the financial technology sector, the Fintech sector, such as Equifax and Deloitte. But are those just outliers, or is everyone vulnerable?
Well, I would assume the financial sector is particularly vulnerable because that's where people have their money, and therefore it makes a lot of sense if you're going to hack something to hack the financial instruments that people use. What's interesting about this is that it's not just hacking into retailers and trying to get all the cards that retailers have. This is really hacking into a bureau, and this is identity breach, which is a different order of magnitude in terms of complexity, both in terms of the scope as well as in terms of complexity to resolve the problem, than just, let's say, an individual retailer getting hacked.
They're not outliers in my opinion, because we have seen breaches like these and even more larger in the capacity, starting from the Target breach several years ago, and then going on to Home Depot and then Neiman Marcus. So the fact is that these breaches are going to continue. So it doesn't look like to be an outlier. However, the thing is that it's how we can manage these, and then how we can control these breaches going forward is going to be the challenge.
How concerned is the fintech industry, like the credit card service providers, and what are their biggest worries?
So, very concerned. We are always concerned. Security is, for Mastercard, it's actually one of our key mission drivers or statements. Our CEO is very focused on security. So we get tremendous support as far as investments and advancing our technology and building new capability and investing in people. I will tell you, a lot of the financial sector chief information security officers that I speak with and talk to, they're very focused on it. Concern might be the wrong word, but just very focused and want to get the right thing done to protect a company.
The biggest concern for the financial industry is the impact that it has on the consumers, right? First of all, the charges that have been, either their identity has been compromised, or even if there are fraudulent charges, the financial institution has to make the consumers whole again. And then as a result, now the cards have to be reissued. So it's an underlying cost that impacts the financial institution, and it affects the bottom line. So one of the largest concerns is that, while we have to partner with a lot of service providers in order to deliver the services to our consumers, the challenge is how do we make the service providers be accountable and maintain the confidential information of our consumers and keep them safe.
What is the fintech industry doing to protect and empower consumers to ensure that their money, in the form of credit cards and bank accounts and so on, is going to be safe?
I think first off, with cards, there is zero liability that we provide the cardholder. So if something were to happen, that guarantee is on the cardholders. They're not going to be subject to loss. So using cards is still very safe. There are things that we're doing. You can look at EMV, our deployment of chip within card to secure the plastic device itself as it communicates its information back to us. We will continue to do more to advance security. If you look at our ID check solution, where we're using facial recognition to allow for a transaction to occur. We're doing other things like behavioral analytics or device identity checking. We're making those capabilities available to our customers so that they can be more assured that the security of their transaction is being well maintained.
I think the question is, as an industry, what are the different players in the ecosystem doing to build consumer confidence? And I think there are broadly three key areas. So the first one is to drive better fraud management and risk management strategies. The second, from an infrastructure perspective, make sure that the payment instruments are tokenized so that even if it gets compromised in one store, it doesn't impact your entire payment instrument. But the third key area is really co-opting consumers by engaging more directly with consumers, since now it's possible with the advent of smartphones.
What security breakthroughs is the fintech industry developing that we don't already know about?
I'll talk about one key area that really brings together both the issuer and the consumer. Right? So with the advent of smartphones, so you have 24/7 communication. So after all, it's the consumer who knows whether a transaction is legitimate or not. And so there are a number of sort of evolutions that are going on, and in fact, OnDot is at the vanguard of this, where you're trying to co-opt the consumer by giving them the visibility so that consumers are able to react and say whether something is fraudulent or not. This drives both engagement and confidence.
We communicate a lot about what our threats are to each other in order to allow others in our industry to protect themselves. I think you will see us share more at machine speed so that as we defend ourselves, other environments will also learn to defend themselves at greater speed, right? Right now it's through human documenting it and sending it to another human, and the other human looks at it and says, well, this is what we must do. We'll get to a point where we'll enable controls because we just saw something, and that will spread to other banks, other payment processors. They will get the message that this attack is out there, and then in an automated way protect themselves.
What are the opportunities for enterprises, retailers, and so on to work with the fintech industry in order to protect both themselves and their customers?
I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities that companies can take advantage of. If you just think about card on file, which that's a big problem with hacks, right? They go in, they steal large quantities of card information that a retailer or a merchant might have. Just working with us, we can tokenize that information so that it's actually not the card. It's a representation of the card, and if that representation is stolen, that's okay. We just throw all of those out and we make new ones. So tokenization, it's different than just encryption. You know, using EMV. I mean, that mandate's rolling out, and merchants are starting to get into the act of enabling chip payment on their point-of-sale terminals. But tokenization, other authentication technologies that we're offering or we're letting customers take advantage of, those will help to secure the transaction and better protect their customers.
There are different constituents, and I think they need to do different things. A retailer needs to make sure that they don't have any PII data. So in fact, rather than having raw card data, to be able to tokenize it so that even if it's compromised, the user is not compromised. From the issuer perspective, I think the biggest thing is to make sure that, number one, the data itself is secure and there are effective fraud management systems. But like I said, going back to the consumer, co-opting the consumer, because that's the fastest way to figure out whether fraud happens or not.
What help does the fintech industry need from third parties, from the outside, from Wall Street, Silicon Valley, from government, in order to protect themselves and improve security?
The one thing that is missing today is the absence or the lack of a national data security standard. Many countries in the European continent have the national data security standard, which is enforced at the state level. However, the United States currently lack that. Even though we have the PCI DSS, but it's still a standard, but it's not legally enforced throughout the United States. So having that national data security standard and have it enforced will make a tremendous impact, and putting the accountability back not only to the financial institutions, which are highly regulated anyways, but then also to all the business providers and service providers who handle confidential data like PII and even card data.
So if you look at it from a US-centric perspective, for the most part, having a top-down legislation is very hard to make it work. And the reason is, this is not a blank slate. You don't start afresh. There is a huge existing installed base. So I think the innovations have to come from the edges, the retailers and the issuers, and that's really what's happening. If I just look at what OnDot is doing, for example, having issuers communicate with cardholders and giving them control. These are some instances of how you can solve the problem. In other countries, particularly where digital economy is not sufficiently pervasive, you have the luxury of being able to do a top-down governmental program. I don't think that will really work in the US.
So it seems that large financial institutions are no more or less vulnerable than any other large organisation. We just have to hope that they can firm up their defences for all our sakes.